Good afternoon, and welcome to the National Working Positive Coalition's presentation on positively aging and work. My name is Vanessa Johnson. I'm a board member of the National Working Positive Coalition, and I'm affiliated with the Reunion Project as a member of its program work group. I am also a long-term survivor of HIV and attribute part of my resiliency to having been able to return to work. I have worked in HIV as an advocate, a senior leader in program and operations, and a trainer for the past 25 years. For this portion of the webinar, I will be interviewing Mark Misrock. Mark currently serves as the Executive Director for the National Working Positive Coalition, and he is here to talk with us about some real issues to consider in making decisions about work, practical strategies for considering work, overcoming barriers, preparing for new employment, and getting the job you want, and resources available to help in considering and getting the work you want. During this pre-recorded webinar, please share with us in the chat what you need in terms of employment, whether that is to go back to work or to stay employed. If you are working or have gone back to work before, please share with us and others on the webinar those resources and strategies you found helpful to you and might be helpful to others. We're going to now pause for a minute to give you time to put your initial responses in the chat box. Please do so now. While you're doing that, please feel free to add other comments or questions throughout the entire presentation in the chat box. We really do want to hear from you and appreciate your feedback. And we also want to be responsive to any questions, concerns you might have. As a reminder, during the breakout sessions after this presentation ends, we will be participating in a 30-minute session for discussion and Q&A. So Mark, let's start. Why don't you tell us about yourself, what the National Working Positive Coalition is and does, and how you became involved with the National Working Positive Coalition?
Vanessa, I really appreciate it. And many thanks to the Reunion Project for including us and this segment on employment and employment services in this webinar. I'm particularly excited to participate in this project in the region where I was born and grew up. I was born in Meridian, Mississippi, and grew up in Mobile, Alabama. And I'm so excited to have this opportunity to connect with the wonderful folks who've been organizing this initiative, and look forward to any future follow-up programming that we may have the opportunity to participate in. I am someone who's been living with HIV for over 35 years. I first tested positive and confirmed my HIV diagnosis in 1989, and I have struggled mightily myself with employment during these years that I have been focusing on surviving and eventually focusing on thriving, living with HIV, and found a lot of challenge myself in doing that. I hadn't completed a college degree, had very limited work experience and skills, kept taking little jobs that just made enough money for me to get by for many years. And in 1992, I found a small fledgling volunteer-run employment program specifically for people living with HIV, where I then lived in San Francisco, which served the Bay Area. And I clung to it with every finger and every knuckle, hoping that they would understand where I was and possibly help me move out of the work that I was doing at that time as a cab driver, which had become a trap that was increasingly threatening to my mental health and well-being. After having initially been more of an adventure and a novelty. As I participated in the services of that agency, I learned gradually what a vocational rehabilitation process was. I had to get exposed and pick up every new skill to be able to work in an office on any level. My first job goal was to be a receptionist in an HIV service agency. Felt like that would be my first chance to have a job that had real meaning. And I didn't have any of the skills to do that. I learned how to use a keyboard, learned how to use a computer, learned how to appropriately talk to people on the phone or in person at the desk, and gradually started getting more involved as a volunteer in that agency, which really was my training program. And I actually had the opportunity to move into a paid position as the coordinator of that program in 1995. It was a 3-year process at that time for me, and making the transition out of that taxi cab into that job. Since 1995, I have worked for the last 25 years with this personal experience, and then with the experience of working with almost 2,000 people living with HIV in that program in San Francisco Positive Resource Center. I'm helping folks who needed and wanted assistance to either change jobs or get into employment, either again or for the first time ever. And I've had the chance through this work to understand how deeply powerful the needs for employment and employment assistance are in the context of our attempting to stay physically and mentally healthy, as well as economically stable. In 2003, I had the opportunity to participate in a meeting that resulted in the formation of a small group of folks of us from around the country who were interested in and focusing on employment and HIV. That became the National Working Positive Coalition. It's been my honor to work with that group ever since then. I am currently serving as the executive director of the NWPC, and my work focuses on training and capacity building assistance, research, and advocacy to strengthen and expand responses to the employment needs of people living with or at greater vulnerability to HIV.
I'm going to ask you another question, Mark. Based on the research conducted by the National Working Positive Coalition and your own lived experiences with work and advocating for employment, please inform us about the top 3 issues that you feel are important for new employment and getting the job you want.
Vanessa, thank you. I really do have some strong thoughts based on all of that learning and experience and observation about what are the key issues that I would really want to encourage people to hold in mind considering and pursuing employment. First and foremost, for people living with HIV, I so strongly recommend considering plans for change with a goal of at least maintaining, if not improving, your access to health coverage and treatment, to economic security and stability, to housing, and to the other supports and resources that many of us depend on to be well and stable and even in a position to consider employment. And there may be a variety of strategies to do that. I think that one of the most valuable strategies is to really learn about the resources that are available to you in your community. learn about the resources within the HIV services that you are connected with or may be eligible to connect with. Find out where you can get good quality, current, accurate, individualized information about what may happen, if anything, to your health insurance, to your financial benefits if you receive them, to your housing benefits if you receive them, if you make changes to add income through work earnings. There are a number of resources that may exist in the community, and I'll talk more about those a little bit later in this presentation for doing that. I also think that it is vitally important, and for some of us, this may have never felt possible in the past, but I think it's vitally important to really think about what kinds of work situations, what kinds of employers, what kinds of job duties and tasks, what kind of job environment is really most likely to be the best match for your interests, your preferences, your values, your skills and talents for where you want to be pointed in the future as you continue in employment. I feel like so many of us feel like we are just in a position of having to take any job that might possibly be offered to us. And in encouraging everyone to really collect the information about the resources that can be available to you for career counseling, for job coaching, for employment assistance, for job search assistance, for training, for education. I really encourage folks to consider the potential and what opportunity you may have. Some folks need to get a job yesterday, but if you have the ability to take some time and you can learn about services and resources and the options that are available in your community, I would so greatly encourage folks to feel the real potential that there may be many options that you've never had a chance to learn about. It's very rare, but is beginning to happen in some HIV services agencies, that HIV service providers are able to help us to become more well-informed about what our options are, what the available resources are. And that's what I so much wish for all long-term HIV survivors, that in considering new employment goals, in pursuing new employment, whether it's getting a job with someone or being self-employed, that you have a chance to learn about resources that all too often I have found very few of us have had a chance to know about and learn about and take advantage of. Sometimes even when they're resources that are literally around the corner from where our HIV services are located. I do think that one of the major issues for us as people living with HIV is to communicate to our service providers that our economic well-being, that our ability to participate in the employment that we need and want is a major factor in our mental health, our well-being, and our physical health. And we need our agencies to become informed and to be linked with the service systems that can connect us with the information, the services, and resources that could support our making a transition into work that we need and want.
Thank you, Mark, for your response. I've been taking a lot of notes. You have given some very good information that I think everyone will find valuable. And so what I heard you say that the three top issues is one, learning about the resources in your community. 2, making sure that you get the individualized attention you need to assess how the decisions you are going to make impact your current world, including your benefit packages or any benefit services that you are currently receiving. And 3, for you to think about the things you like to do in terms of, like Mark said, your skills and your talents. What is it that you're really interested in? And then how and where do you want to work? Because workplace environment and culture is very key. So remember those 3 issues. We are now going to move on to strategies, and I'm going to ask Mark to address what effective strategies currently exist for considering work, overcoming barriers, preparing for new employment, and getting the job you want.
Vanessa, thank you. And I'm going to give some of the ideas that are especially prominent in my thoughts in considering that question right now. And just say that my understanding is that we may have an opportunity to do a broader, longer webinar with the Reunion Project where we can get into more detail than we have time for today. But I want to talk especially about the kinds of fears and concerns and challenges that many long-term HIV survivors talk about and think about and sometimes experience in considering and pursuing work and in the workplace. One of the major concerns that I hear about a lot and that I think is very real is the very real age discrimination in our culture and certainly in the workplace. And I want to focus especially on the kinds of activities and preparation and investment in learning that people can be involved in to reduce the dynamic of age discrimination in pursuing and succeeding in employment for those of us who are living and aging with HIV. I strongly encourage folks to take a look at the opportunities to strengthen your basic skills in terms of using technology. I know so many of us can really be frustrated and sometimes baffled by the technology that it looks like younger people just have no trouble with whatsoever. And I certainly have that experience regularly myself, and find that any and all opportunity to build basic skills and when possible more advanced skills in using the internet, in searching the internet, in using a laptop, in using a computer, in using the basic Microsoft Office suite programs, and using email, in using texting, in using Microsoft Word, in using Excel when possible, that any kind of training and skill building, whether it's in a formal class, whether it's an online tutorial, and there's so many free online tutorials that you can find for any and all of these just by searching free online tutorial. We can spend a little bit of time, maybe a few minutes a day, maybe it's all in one day, to really become more comfortable and more confident using technology. From what I have always heard and experienced, this is one of the primary challenges from both people who are older job seekers and workers, and also from employers, that when people who are living and aging with HIV can invest time and energy in opportunities to build your skills which inevitably builds your confidence and comfort, so that it will not only help you be more successful in a job that you do get, but it will help you present yourself more confidently and comfortably when you are talking to an employer who may have a job that you really want to get. So that kind of activity, when you can find the energy, the motivation, the hopefulness, the time and the energy to invest in any level of learning and skill building related to technology, you will find that it will pay off. It's not only going to pay off related to employment and job searching, but increasingly we've had the chance recently during the impacts of COVID-19 to discover how much there's been a shift to use of technology in telehealth, in just accessing healthcare from our providers, but also in opportunities like this one we're participating in today to just connect with other members of our community and be able to be interactive in these venues. So with so much understanding, as a person who struggled a lot with technology myself over the years, I just want to express my wish and hope that everyone will find the motivation and the time and the energy to take the risk to invest in trying to build your skills and build your abilities with technology. I want to talk also about gaps in work history. All of us don't have them, but many of us, like me, have had the experience of substantial gaps in work history to confront. It has an impact not only in sending out resumes or applications or in interviews with employers, but it also has a real effect on our confidence and self-esteem and comfort about presenting ourselves as the strongest candidate for a job. And I want to talk about what I repeatedly had the chance to learn in working with so many people living and aging with HIV as an employment counselor myself. What I first learned and then had reinforced ever more deeply over time was that almost every single one of us really diminishes and discounts the very real skills and ability and the very real work experience and talents that we have developed and expressed and demonstrated over the years of our success in living and surviving with HIV to this point. I regularly find that when I'm talking with someone to get some information about their work experience and their skills, they will ignore many experiences that are absolutely vital work experiences that they don't even count in their own head. If they didn't get paid for it, they will not even think of it as work experience. And a lot of folks have done things, including folks who had really meaningful work experience and training when they were incarcerated, and will not even describe or count that in any attempt to talk about their work skills and experience. Folks who did things that maybe weren't above ground and considered formal legal employment, yet they were very real work experiences and skill development and an opportunity to really learn about what we're good at and what we like doing. And so I think that when you are considering what your work skills and experiences are at the outset of developing goals for what you want to do and developing preparation to talk to employers and other people about what your skills are and what your experience are, I want you to take a look at what you may be skipping over that may be very real strengths and skills. And I think almost everybody is going to find there's something that you might have been tempted to not mention, that there's a way to include and really credit yourself with, because it may be a very real, concrete experience of true job skill building and experience, vital to your access to future job opportunities you want.
And I just want to interrupt you on that point, because I think that's an excellent point. And I would also add for folks to consider the work they're doing around HIV. You might be on an advisory body, community planning council. You might be doing speaking. These are all work-related activities. Is that not true, Mark?
True, absolutely true. And you may, through those activities, have really become a leader in your local public health system, whether you're treated that way, but you should, or whether you have acknowledged and really absorbed that fact for yourself. But you have been a public health leader. That's and right. That experience is extremely valuable. So for some folks, it's not always clear that volunteer experience belongs on your resume. And you absolutely should credit yourself for all of the types of work, tasks and duties and project work and deliberations and work-related skills that you have exercised in the course of performing your duties.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your responses around effective strategies. Those were really helpful. So let's spend a minute or two talking about the resources that are available for help in considering and getting the work you want, which could include changing your current job. So Mark, why don't you tell us what resources are available?
Okay. First, I'm going to do a quick mention of the resources that I really wish were available for everybody in their community, and that is HIV-specific employment programs. There's very few in any part of the country, and there's very few in the region of the New Orleans Regional Reunion Project Town Hall webinar. I want to mention that in Baton Rouge, Open Healthcare Clinic has created with HOPWA funding an employment program specifically for people living with HIV in Baton Rouge who are getting the access that is so rare everywhere to 3 full-time employment specialists who are trained and experienced specifically in working with people living with HIV to develop goals for employment and pursue them successfully to get the jobs that they need and want in that area. I wish everybody had a program like that in your community, and I want you to start telling folks that that needs to happen. There's another program in Texas, in Houston. Goodwill of Houston has developed Project New Hope, which is an employment program specifically for people living with HIV. And I, again, say that there's some very real opportunity for us when we pull these agencies outside of the HIV services network into focusing specifically on understanding and addressing our unique and specific needs and issues and opportunities. In every part of the South and the whole country, there is a network of federally funded as well as state-funded programs that are available to everyone. 2 systems I'm going to mention very quickly are the vocational rehabilitation system. There's a state agency in every state as well as the territories and the District of Columbia across this country. Those are programs specifically for people with disabilities. And let me tell you, people living with HIV have not gotten our proportionate share of that pie. And there's some real opportunity to get funding for the kinds of services, resources, training, education, supplies, equipment, self-employment resources that we would most effectively succeed with through that system. And I will be sharing information in the chat and after this webinar via email with everyone with lists of how to find where your local office is for vocational rehabilitation. There's also a system that's for everybody, including people living with disabilities, but not just. That is the National Workforce Development System. The American Job Centers are located in communities all across the country and within reach of virtually everybody, including in rural areas. And I'll share information about how you can search and find your local American Job Center and take advantage of those services. And those are available to you and you're eligible for them whether or not you disclose having any disability or experience with any chronic health condition. Also, for people who live in communities where it may be hard to get counseling and advisement related to your benefits and making a transition to begin receiving work earnings, there's a program called the Work Incentive Planning and Assistance Program. It's funded by the Social Security Administration. They're hoping that if they have this resource of accurate information for individuals about how they can begin to work and maintain the supports and resources they need and want, that folks will. But you are not required to use that to go off of benefits. A program that is available through choosework.net, and I will also share information about that.
I hope, as was suggested in the introduction, that you all were able to note some of these resources that Mark has shared with us, but as he stated, he will also be sharing a list of resources with everybody who's participated on this webinar. So Mark, in closing, what can we expect from NWPC within the next 6 months or before the end of the year?
Most excited about two projects that we're working on. One is a nationwide needs assessment survey research project of people living with HIV. There's been too little research done to actually learn about what the challenges that we face, what the concerns are that we have, what the opportunities may be, what the strategies are that we've utilized, what the benefits are for us in work, and what defines a good, positive work-related outcome for us as individuals. And so I want to encourage everybody to keep an eye out for this NWPC Employment Needs Survey of people living with HIV being rolled out in your community. And I'm hoping that everybody gets a chance to connect with it over the coming months. Number two, we are working on a project that that really forms a work group of expert stakeholders related to HIV and employment. It's going to be a combination of people living with HIV, HIV and employment service providers, researchers at the intersection of HIV and employment, and policymakers to come together and share what it is that we know, what we've learned from what has been done and tested, the gaps in what we know, the questions that we have, the needs that we can identify, and the recommendations that we forward to create a recommendations and guidance document to be used at the national level, at state levels, at regional levels, and at local levels, and even at agency levels. So I look forward also to opportunities for folks to participate in informing that process in the months to come as well.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that response. And we're going to close out our session by thanking you because we appreciate all that the National Working Positive Coalition is doing under your leadership and in partnership with the Reunion Project for people living with and aging with HIV who are considering work or working. On behalf of the National Working Positive Coalition and the Reunion Project, we want to thank you for participating in this webinar. Have a good day.